Alrighty, Alex Stanton here, and I'm just going to walk through how we use basically a commercial multifamily calculator. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll get right on it. So basically, this is how I'm going to take any subject property and evaluate what we can afford to pay for it. So up in the upper right-hand corner here, we have tabs for 3 unit types and the amount of rent that's being collected. These numbers are based on a property that I was analyzing last week. I'm still negotiating with the sellers on it. Basically, these are the current rents for those units, but you can adjust this for any number of bedrooms, any number of units. This is a 12-unit property, which is pretty awesome. Anything 4 or more, this could really apply to. So basically, we're taking the total rent for each of these unit types, and we are calculating all of that to create a total monthly rent and then an annual income for the property. That's going to be kind of our first step to give a rough analysis of the property. Then over here to the left, I have some basic numbers. This is sort of some creative financing evaluation for the property. This may not apply for every deal, but it's very helpful. Basically, this tab right here is going to be our purchase price. This is the interest rate we're assuming. So one of the deals we're offering the seller in this particular case, I'm going to be following up with them this afternoon actually to make that final offer, is a seller financing with a 3-year balloon payment, because the amount, in this case, the amount that they want to get for the property is more than a bank will lend on. So this is one way that we can work around that. So if the seller is willing to finance at a 3% interest rate, we may be able to make a deal work. So here we've got the purchase price, the interest rate, the down payment, and then the rest of this is basically going to auto-populate. So that monthly payment is going to be based on just an interest-only rate and what it would cost to pay for the property over the course of a year. And then our costs for the property are going to be calculated right here. I actually need to change this one. It's actually going to be this number, which is about 10,000 divided by 12. So our insurance cost for this property was much higher than I expected. And it may kind of blow this deal up. We'll see. But basically, we've got our taxes for the property. This is an estimate, the insurance cost for the property. And then you can change the fields of management, maintenance, vacancy, and capital expenditure. Each of these is a pretty relevant expense. Generally speaking, you're going to want between 5 and 10% for each of these. I tend to run my numbers on the higher end because we want to be very conservative. Maintenance is going to be your general repairs. That someone has, your dishwasher fails and you need to send a handyman out. That might be replacing a refrigerator or something. So each month we're trying to set aside 8% of the rent for those kind of things to come up because they're going to happen. Then we've got our management cost. I put that at 10%. That's going to be the higher end, especially for a property with this many units. We may be able to get 7 or even 6 or 5% for this. But again, I would rather budget a lot more and then find a better deal. And also be willing to pay a little bit more for better quality management. The next one we've got is our vacancy. We generally assume about 8% vacancy so that we have a good amount of cushion. That basically is the rent from 1 unit. So if we always have 1 unit vacant, we're okay. Capital expenditure, that's going to be our big stuff. That's redoing the siding, the roof, water heaters. If we were to de-lead a unit because we knew we were going to have a child under the age of 6 or a pregnant woman move in, all of those expenses need to be set aside in reserves. Then we have a subtotal of our costs. Those are going to be the monthly costs to own the property before factoring in the cost of financing. And then our monthly payment is going to be based on that interest rate and that down payment. So we're just taking that field from there. Total cost, that's going to be our subtotal, all the kind of variable and some of the fixed expenses. So these would be our fixed expenses, our taxes, insurance, and the monthly payment. And then the vacancy management, CapEx, and maintenance are going to be variable expenses, which is why we're using that percentage. So our total costs are going to be about, in the case of this subject property, $6,380.33. Our current rents should be $7,050. So our net cash flow for that is $669.67. The nice thing here is even if we have 1 unit vacant the entire time, we're still expecting to take home this $670. If we have 2 units vacant, then we're looking at pretty much nothing in cash flow. But if we have all 12 vacant, we're actually going to have $1,100, $1,200 coming in cash flow. We want to set that money aside just for when stuff happens. That's also going to help cushion us against evictions, things like that. And then that cash on cash return is basically saying at the end of the year, based on how much we originally invested, that 80,000, how much are we getting as a return? So that's with the seller financing option here. And then the next option we have is going to be traditional financing. And this is where we need to get a little bit more into the nitty gritty. This was a deal where we got the financials for the property and we found out, okay, they've been really inconsistent with the amount of money they've taken home. They've spent a lot of money, they've done an amazing job maintaining it, and that's commendable. The downside is that a bank is going to lend based on what they took home, not based on what they put into the property and what the property puts out. So we have to know that number. We need at least 3 years of net cash flow, and that's what we've got here. So in 2017, they took home almost $42,000. That's a great number. If that was all we were looking at, we could pay a lot more for it. In 2018, they took home $30,000. In 2019, they took home $24,000. So that's really kind of a problem. That gave us an average annual return of $32,254. So we need to kind of work backwards to determine our maximum purchase price for that. So what we need to do is we know now this allowable monthly payment is going to be based on needing a 1.3 debt coverage ratio. What that means is if our debt payments are this number times 12, which comes out to this, it needs to be enough below the annual return that we're getting 30% more every year versus the debt. So this is saying this times 130, if we were to take the math here, this times 1.3, 130%, spits out that 32,254. It's exact numbers because I used those calculations. So that's the maximum amount of debt payment that we can make for the principal and interest on this property in a given year and have a commercial lender accept these terms. The next thing we're doing is working backwards. So these are our changeable fields, are all the pale yellow highlights. The loan term is going to go a long way to affecting what we can afford to pay, as is the interest rate. If we only have 15 years to pay this off, 180 months, now our maximum purchase price just dropped down to $379,000, way less, because our monthly payment is staying the same. So this allows us to kind of work backwards from our allowable monthly payment, working through these terms to find our maximum purchase price. This is a way that we can present a very transparent offer to the seller, explaining exactly what we can afford to pay and why. We've gotten quoted an interest rate of 3.75%. That could fluctuate a little bit. If we end up with a 4% interest rate, again, that's going to bring down our maximum purchase price. That's okay. Like if we end up in a position where we need to eat an additional $20,000 down payment because we want to make this deal work, like if they actually agree to sell for $595, in the case of this particular property, they were gunning for like $900. So this is already a very hard sell, which is why we're coming into this interest only section here. Anyway, if they agree to something like this, then we just may have to eat a little bit based on the interest rate changing from what we were offered last week. And then again, we've got our down payment amount. So if we were to do a 50% down payment, we can pay a whole bunch more for the property. We're not going to do that. But that kind of gives you a sense of what we could afford to pay and why we're allowing to pay that amount. And so this allows us to kind of work backwards from their rent rolls to calculate what we could pay. This is an additional calculator here, which if we didn't have the rent rolls, we would have to make assumptions based off of. And pretty much what we would have here is we'd say whatever the purchase price is, we need to have that same kind of debt coverage ratio, which means that it's basically going to be our monthly income minus our subtotal costs here is really what we would then be using for our debt coverage. So I'm actually going to make an additional field, which is going to be monthly cash flow. And that's just going to be equal to, or monthly income, I should have said, excuse me, is going to be this, our current rents. And now our monthly expenses less debt service are going to be the following. I'm going to go ahead and put that one over here. Perfect. Okay. So those are going to be equal to these subtotal costs. So this looks pretty good. Basically what this would mean would be annual income. Actually, hold on. We're going to do, okay, so basically our monthly net is going to be this minus this, is going to be 3,300. Basically here, what we're going to have, that means that our debt service can't be more than a number that's going to equal that time when it's multiplied by 1.3. So our maximum payment is going to be related to this. So we're going to have is equals, what is the math we did for this? Give me just 1 second. This is more or less accurate. Hold on. I just need to make sure that my math was correct. Yeah, okay, so I got the math that I wanted to. So it's really going to be equals this divided by 1.3. So that means that our maximum monthly payment is going to be that. It's going to be $2,541. This is already a little bit better than the financing that we're coming to. So what we can do now is using our pro forma, now we know our maximum monthly payment. We can then estimate based on the purchase price. So let's say we did $750,000 with those terms. Now we have a monthly payment that's just a little bit over our max. So this would basically mean that based on our pro forma, we really should be looking at paying around $725,000 for this property. I know that was a pretty exhaustive overview here, but that's basically what we're going to do to make use of this calculator. I hope that's helpful for you. Thanks very much for tuning in and have a great day.